Talking TCU football here at the Voice of College Football with a huge one coming up in Austin. Big 12 championship implications on the line. And oh yeah, college football playoff berth as well. We got Melissa Treebwasser on the line from Frogs today. Melissa, how you doing?
I can't complain. TCU football is 9-0, and they control their own destiny when it comes to the Big 12 championship and the college football playoffs. It's a lot to be excited about if you're a TCU football fan right now.
All right, so you know the deal. Everyone's writing you off this weekend, but everybody's been writing you off every weekend to basically say, this is going to be the weekend. This is going to be the weekend, and then you're down by a couple scores in the second half, but pull it out. So the game against Texas Tech was a little closer than maybe if anybody checked in at 34-17 late in the fourth quarter, but with about 10, 11 minutes left, I was watching, and Texas Tech was up 17-13. They got a stop. There was a big face mask penalty, and then TCU took it from there and pretty much never looked back.
Yeah, I think I expected this one to be close. I wasn't totally surprised by the way that Texas Tech came out. I was surprised by how much the TCU offense struggled. Quentin Johnston didn't play, after the first part of the first series, and that obviously impacted the game plan. Max Duggan didn't look as sharp, but at the end of the day, it's really hard to hold this TCU offense down for 60 minutes. And it took a couple of Tech penalties to kind of get them in a rhythm. Once they got that monkey off their back, didn't score the first offensive touchdown of the game until the fourth quarter. But once they got one, three came pretty quickly. And then the defense did their job, and I thought played one of their most complete games of the season.
This Texas team, they seem as though when they're laser focused and when they're up for the game, they can be as good as anybody in the Big 12 and maybe beyond that. They were able to do that last weekend. They had letdowns in the fourth quarter against Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. But again, when they seem to be laser focused, they're going to be tough to handle.
Yeah, I think that this Texas team is the most talented team, top to bottom, in the entire conference. In fact, they were I hate to admit it, but they were my dark horse pick to win the conference, and I voted for them to win the conference in the Big 12 media poll at the beginning of the season. At home, they have looked really, really sharp with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, and so he struggled a little bit on the road. Unfortunately for TCU, he'll be playing in the friendly confines of Gerald K. Royal Stadium on Saturday, and when they're good, they're really good. When they're bad, they're pretty average. And so it's going to be up to TCU to kind of put them in that pretty average box, and also on their side of the ball, play better than they've shown they've played in the last month or so.
Obviously, if Texas can play from in front of the sticks, Bijan Robinson becomes more of a factor, and he has really been on a roll. We've known he's arguably the best back in college football, but he is really beating teams up, really took it to Kansas State last week. So how do you think that the ground defense is going to hold up in this one?
Well, D. Winters went out in the third quarter on a targeting call and will miss the first half of the game against Texas. And that is a huge blow to a TCU linebacking unit that's already really, really shallow due to injuries. Marcel Brooks is out for the year. They lost Thomas Armstrong in the first game of the season. Those are your two primary backups. Shad Banks, the former Texas A&M player who's played some wide receivers, played some linebackers, done a little bit of everything, but had a pretty big play last year against Baylor to seal that win. So it's a kid who kind of rises to the moment. Had a sack against Texas Tech, looked pretty good. He's still kind of getting up to speed in this Joe Gillespie defense, but he's a guy that the coaching staff and the players have a lot of confidence in. The maybe silver lining of this is that he is far and away the most athletic player in that group. D. Winters is a great athlete in his own right, but Shad Banks is probably the only guy that can really run sideline to sideline with Bijan Robinson. Maybe that's an advantage. At the same time, Bijan Robinson, like you said, is probably the best back in college football. He could have a field day against this TCU defense if the linebackers aren't super, super sharp. On the flip side, watching him and Kendre Miller trade carries is going to be a lot of fun for college football fans. Robinson gets all the hype, and it's well-deserved. He's exceptional. But Kendre Miller's put together a pretty good season in his own right, and he is a former, he's a Texas kid. He's a kid who grew up wanting to play for the Longhorns, I'm sure. So I have a feeling he'll have a little bit something special, too, for Texas on Saturday.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to be watching TCU for the first time and maybe watching Texas for the first time coming up Saturday, because this is arguably the most important game and the best matchup of the day. And Kendre Miller doesn't have a lot of folks on the periphery outside the Big 12 that know about him, but he put up something like a $153 last weekend against in that matchup against Texas Tech, and it's been a string of 100-yard games for him. So he's been exciting.
Yeah, and he's the thing I love about Kendre Miller is that he will, beat you down for those 3-4 yard carries in the first half, but it's only a matter of time before he breaks one. He can run between the tackles. He can get out on the edge. He's got speed to run away from guys. His 50-yarder that he broke in the third quarter kind of finally started to wear down that Texas Tech defensive front, which if you haven't watched a lot of Texas Tech football, first of all, I don't blame you, but second of all, that defensive line is as good as any in the country. They have the NFL prospects, I think, across the board. Tyree Wilson's one of the most fearsome guys in all of college football. And so they're pretty solid up front. I think they're maybe not one of the best, but definitely one of the most underrated. And Kendre Miller and that offensive line just kept wearing on him. They knew the run was coming and they really couldn't stop it in the second half. So I think that he could be very successful against the Longhorns, and he's going to have to be, especially if Quentin Johnston can't go or isn't 100% healthy on Saturday. It looks like he's going to play, but he's certainly not going to be 100%.
Jatavian Sanders, one of the big body wide receivers for Texas. Xavier Worthy's the headliner. Jordan Whittington, just a loaded group. The secondary is going to have their hands full.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that TCU got on Saturday was Millard Bradford back in the secondary. He is a super intelligent player. He understands the defense. He makes a lot of the calls. So having him with Josh Newton, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, I think that helps a ton. You're going to see Mark Perry, one of the other safeties, and a lot of run support. Coverage is not his strength. And so it's going to be up to Bradford and Travius Hodges-Tomlinson and Newton to, I think, really turn on the A game. Look, Quinn Ewers is going to get his. Like, there's absolutely no doubt. With that wide receiving unit, they've got a chance to really put some points on the board. TCU's offense is going to need to showcase something. I think this is going to come down to turnovers and which defense gets the big stop at the big moment, because I think we know both of these teams can really score.
Melissa Treebwasser setting up TCU in Texas for us. You can join her on Frogs Today. You see it right there on the banner, and follow Melissa on Twitter as well. So this is the same old story as well. Vegas giving the credit to Texas. And if you take away the Alabama game, they've played extremely like schedules. Obviously, they play in the only conference in college football where everybody plays everyone. And so the schedules are but at the same time, Texas has lost 2 games against teams that, of course, TCU has defeated. So your thoughts about a 7-point underdog? Obviously, once they hit the field, it doesn't matter.
Sure. Listen, the best thing that could happen to Sonny Dykes and TCU is for the Horned Frogs to be 9-0, ranked number 4 in the AP poll and somewhere around there in the college football playoff, and head to Austin as an underdog. I mean, you can't write that up better if you are a college football coach, right? That's exactly what you're hoping for. TCU is well aware that they control their own destiny. I think they're also well aware they're going to have to go undefeated to have any shot at the playoffs. And you go at Texas with College Game Day, ABC, prime time. I mean, the hype is going to be off the charts for that program, even more so than it normally is. And then you're going to follow that up by going to Baylor, whose playoff dreams you ruined a season ago. And then your reward, if you survive that gauntlet, is, you have to play the best defense in the conference in Iowa State. And so nothing is going to come easy for TCU. You might as well just keep getting to say, nobody believes in us. We're the underdogs. We've got to prove them wrong. I think that's kind of a dream scenario. I have no problem with the spread. I would love for it to be, give Texas 14. I don't care. I think the worse that it looks on paper, the better for TCU. I also have no illusions that this is going to be one that the Frogs are going to be able to cakewalk into. They can't play like they did at West Virginia. They can't play like they did against Texas Tech, and they certainly can't play like they did the first half against Kansas State or Oklahoma State, or count on a key injury to be the difference. They're going to have to play the kind of complete game that they started against Oklahoma if they're going to have a shot. Texas is playing really, really well. Steve Sarkisian's did a great job getting them motivated. And by the way, there's a guy sitting in the press box that knows or the coaching box that knows a little bit about the athletes at TCU, and is going to certainly have some involvement in trying to slow them down on Saturday.
How much does this talk rile you up and everybody else that's associated with TCU football that, they have to go undefeated? Shoot, I just did a call-in show, and there are people calling in saying, I don't care if TCU goes undefeated. The recruiting rankings tell us, and the NFL draft selected that they don't belong, that they can't compete with Ohio State and Georgia, et cetera, down the line.
I mean, listen, I'm still suffering PTSD from 2014. So you're a TCU fan. I mean, somebody was tweeting out the enrollment numbers of the top 4 teams in the AP poll right now. And TCU is 10,000 undergrads. Everyone else is 30, 40, 50,000 students. TCU is the only school in the country where more than 50% of the student body shows up for every home game at over 6,000. You might think 6,000 students, big deal. But again, when your enrollment's 10,000, 60% of your student body showing up on a Saturday is a pretty big deal. TCU's always been an underdog. They were fighting in 2009 when they got, can I say screwed over by the BCS and had to play Boise State in the Poinsettia Bowl. They almost got screwed over in 2010 when they made their Rose Bowl run because thankfully, a little kicker in Nevada, Boise missed an important kick. Colin Kaepernick will forever be owed a debt by TCU fans for beating Boise State in that game. And, in 2014, they were ranked number 3 going into the weekend. All they did was win 55-3 over Iowa State and ended up dropping to 6 in the poll. So I think, listen, the playoff expansion is going to come and it's going to give teams like TCU more of an opportunity like this. But if you're the Horned Frogs, you have to take advantage this year. The Big 12 still gets a lot of crap, but when you look at it from top to bottom, this is almost as well coached a league as you're going to find in the country. Kansas is bowl eligible. We are in week 10 and Kansas is bowl eligible right now. West Virginia beat Baylor at home on a Thursday night. Oklahoma is the worst that they've been, and they're still putting 50 points on people. This is a really undervalued league when it comes from the fact that every team can beat everybody on any given weekend. And now with the fact that Kansas is a legitimate program, there are no pansies, there are no cupcakes. You don't get to play Vanderbilt. You don't get to play Cal, although we did see them give a scare to USC there for a couple minutes. You don't get any of those off weekends. And so I think if you survive that gauntlet, even with one loss, then you deserve consideration over a 2-loss SEC team, over a 1-loss Pac-12 team. The Big 12 belongs in those conversations, but it's going to be up to them to not just make the playoffs, but show that they can beat these teams and play with some of these teams. I don't know that anybody can really play with Georgia, but when it comes to the Ohio States and the Tennessees and Alabama this year, Oregon, you've got to be able to show that you can win on that stage when the opportunity arises. I don't know if TCU is one of the most elite teams in the country. It's hard to tell on a week-to-week basis, but all I can tell you is that they're 9-0. They've answered the bell every time it's been rung. They are the first team, second team since the 1960s to beat 4 ranked opponents in a 4-week stretch. This team just keeps doing the unexpected. And isn't that what college football is all about?
Yeah, give them an opportunity. That's what we're looking for here. Every time somebody brings up, what would happen if 2 teams play? Well, let's see them play. Let's see them actually play. I just want opportunity for teams that earn it. We're not asking for participation trophies. We're talking about even a 1-loss Power 5 champion.
Yeah.
Again, I know the math doesn't work with 4 spots, but I think that's typically been good enough during the college football playoff era. All right, lastly, Melissa, if I showed you a box score from Saturday but covered it all up and you could only look at one thing to indicate a good result or a bad result, what do you think is key in this one?
Man, this feels like such a cop-out, but it's going to be turnovers. I think that's been the difference for TCU and especially Max Duggan this year is that they have protected the football. He's thrown 2 interceptions. One of them was the end of a half Hail Mary. The other one was just I have no idea what was going through the poor kid's head against West Virginia. And both of those came in wins. But otherwise, TCU has done a great job of protecting the ball, winning the turnover battle, flying to the ball defensively and forcing turnovers. If you're going to beat Texas in Austin on a Saturday night in prime time with game day in town, you're going to have to make them make some mistakes. And this is still a pretty young Texas team at some key positions, especially when you look at experience. If you could get them in some disadvantaged situations, if you can win the special teams battle and the turnover battle, that's going to be TCU's best opportunity to pull off what I guess is technically an upset in Austin.
And for anybody out there that sees my other segments, call-in shows, and all that other business and thinks I might be talking out of both sides of my mouth, I will say this in front of Melissa. I've got TCU ranked number 2 in my rankings, first of all. I have also made the comment that I don't think they're as good as Georgia, Ohio State, and some others. But what I think should matter, put them on the field and let them play.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I think, that's the end of it. Like, I don't know if TCU is going to win on Saturday. I could see them winning comfortably. I could see them losing by 2 scores. But at the end of the day, you go out and you play the game. And TCU is already in just territory that the fan base never expected to be in. This is a team that is 1 win away or a little bit of help from guaranteeing them spot in a Big 12 championship. They were picked to finish 7th in the conference going into the season. So I think as TCU fans, they're just trying to enjoy the ride and just kind of enjoy every success that comes. Maybe the bubble is going to pop at some point, but right now it's really hard to argue with a team that's won every single game that they've played, has won many of them convincingly, and seems to just do what they have to do in order to deserve an opportunity. So yeah, let's just see what they could do.
Melissa Treebwasser on Frogs Today. Catch her work right there. Melissa, appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for having me.